Hello, everyone. It's 1 o'clock, so we're going to go ahead and get started today. My name is Katie Boone, and I'm the Senior Marketing Specialist for the Health Sciences Certification team here at NSF. I want to thank you for joining in today's webinar, where our speakers will be discussing the 5 life hacks to getting to 4055 certification faster. First, I'd like to go over some housekeeping notes. Everyone on the call today will be muted besides the speakers. Please use the chat feature on your screen for any questions that you have during the call. We will be conducting a Q&A immediately following the slides, and we'll follow up with any registrants on questions that we cannot get to during the live session. Today's call is being recorded. Registrants will receive a copy of the slides as well as a link to the recording of the event. There will be a couple of polling questions that we conduct today during this event. So please use your cursor to respond, and the results will be displayed just a few moments after we ask the questions. Along with the recording and the slides of the event, all registrants will receive a follow-up survey. Please send us your feedback, as we want to provide these educational sessions to you more often, and we really appreciate your feedback and how we can improve on these. There is an appendix at the end of this presentation that will be given today that includes several links to essential tools that your team can use in preparing for the 455 certification audits. These slides will be referenced during the event and are available for your team to review. Now I would like to introduce you to today's speakers. Our first panelist is Phil Tucker. Phil is the Global Business Development Director for the Health Sciences Division here at NSF. Phil is a product development expert with decades of experience in helping manufacturers and retailers grow their dietary supplement and OTC drug product sales. Also joining us today is Catherine Fillinger, who is a business lead for the NSF International Health Sciences Certification team. Katie has been with NSF for over 11 years, and over this time has gained expert experience in GMP principles, FDA regulations, industry best practices, ISO principle standards, development, and compliance. Thank you again, everyone, for joining us for today's session, and I will pass it over to Phil to get started.
Thanks, Katie. NSF is an independent public health and safety organization whose central mission is to protect human health. We help people live safer lives by developing standards and then testing or certifying products to those standards. We also do factory audits for a wide range of industries. Apart from certification, we do consulting and training for FDA-regulated products. Some of you may have attended our first webinar on February 10. At that time, we spoke about our consulting services and provided insights on how to prepare for the new 455 auditing standard. During our webinar today, we are going to dig into the actual process of getting certified to this new standard. Before we do that, let's do some quick review from the last webinar. All right, we have our slide. This slide gives you some background on why we developed this new standard. Both retailers and manufacturers alike are looking for some common ground when it comes to GMP audits. Manufacturers struggle to keep up with all the unique requirements, and retailers struggle with inconsistent auditing approaches and reporting. It's a process in need of simplification, that's for sure. So NSF set out to author new standards designed to address the most common industry challenges like the ones I just mentioned. We worked with industry to form a joint committee. Current industry regulations and best practices were all part of the recipe, so to speak, for the new standards. The standards include 455-2 for dietary supplements, 455-3 for personal care and cosmetics, and 455-4 for OTC drugs. In mid-January, we announced our approval, which makes NSF the first certification body with the ANAB accreditation required to certify to these new standards. GRMA, an alliance that NSF belongs to, accepts our new standards. We will talk a little more about GRMA on the next slide. GRMA was formed to help facilitate consensus-based quality standards like the 455. GRMA is separate from NSF and has a growing membership of key industry stakeholders like retailers and manufacturers. As of February 28, we are also now accredited by GRMA to perform 455 audits. So in summary, here are some of the key benefits to our new 455. It reduces the complexity and frequency of your GMP audit program. It's accepted by key retailers and represents industry best practices for GMP audits. And they are public standards updated within a joint committee environment comprised of key industry stakeholders. So now we would like to ask you a question. Have you ever had a third-party audit in the past? So we're going to give you just a few seconds here to answer that question, and hopefully we will be able to share the results.
The results give a 84% yes rate and 16% no.
Okay, so it looks like we have a pretty experienced group. Thanks for that response. So regardless, you've come to the right spot. I'm now going to advance to the next slide and cover the process involved in actually obtaining 455 certification audits with NSF. This flow chart shows the audit certification process. The teal color shows the steps that will be your responsibility, and the blue shows the steps that are our responsibility. The first step is for you to complete a self-assessment. It helps you answer the question, are we ready for this audit? And if prepared, you can then complete and submit an application for an audit. We will take it from there. We will work with you to get the audit scheduled, conduct the audit, generate an audit report, and provide a rating. If there are observations tied to your audit, you will be responsible for addressing the issues through the CAPA process. We will then make a certification decision, and if approved, the certification is valid for 12 months. Recertification is required on an annual basis. This slide provides a little more information on the ratings that we use. We use a grading system. So here's how it works. There are some exceptions, but generally speaking, an A or a B grade leads to certification. A C grade will require a monitoring audit within 6 months from the initial audit. And a D grade is a failure, and after corrective actions are completed, another audit can be scheduled. So here's what NSF will provide after your audit. Your audit report, of course, and your corrective action report will follow that, showing your closures. And last, but by no means least, your certification, which will be listed on nsf.org. Katie, if you could advance to the next slide, that'd be great. Thank you. And so finally, with your certification, you can use these NSF and GRMA marks on company advertising materials. I'm now going to turn this presentation over to Katie Fillinger, who has some really, really great advice for you as you head down the path of 455 certification with NSF. Thank you.
Thank you, Phil, for reviewing the general process. Now let's dive into the 5 life hacks you've all been waiting for. So these life hacks were generated through my years of experience of surviving audits. So they're very applicable to both the 455 scheme, and there are some areas specifically we'll talk about, as well as just audits in general. So starting off with life hack number 1, with any project, regardless of what it is, if it's an audit or if it's just an operational project, you need to make sure you understand the scope. The scope is what gives direction, it gives targets, and it makes sure that there's alignment on what you're reaching for. And it's important, especially when it comes to audits, is because that's how we determine the criteria that we'll be evaluating you against. And in this case, it will determine the audit report, it will determine the certificates that are assigned, and it will determine the official listing. So it's really important that you understand the scope that you're seeking, and we'll go over some good questions to ask yourself before applying. So questions you may want to ask yourself first is really, do I need a GRMA or just an NSF ANSI 455 audit? There are a lot of similarities here, but there are some important differences. One key difference is that GRMA membership is required for any audit that's performed under that scheme. But the benefit of that is that those audits can then be shared with retailers and accepted by those retailers as well. So it has a lot of strong return for those of you that are working with retailers or producing products for retailers. Another benefit too is that you're going to have the ability to leverage those GRMA logos. Both programs come with NSF 455 certificates. Both use the NSF ANSI 455 checklist. Both programs are accredited. So the value is there regardless of what option that you choose, but it's important to understand that prior to you pursuing an application with NSF. Some other questions you may want to ask yourself include, what addresses do you want audited? It's important that we are all on the same page when we perform the audit and that we know exactly what scope is being sought, including those addresses, including those items that you would like excluded from the scope of the audit as well. If we don't have that information, once the audit is performed, we cannot go backwards and perform those evaluation activities again. So it's really important that, again, everyone understands the scope being sought, and that's very clear in your application. If you have questions on the scope that you're seeking and what would be best suited for your company, feel free to ask questions. We're happy to educate you on the different benefits and perks to each of those options, allowing you to make the best decision for you and your company. So life hack number 2 is really making sure you have, oops, I'm sorry, I forgot. I wanted to ask you guys all one question before we started. And Katie will pull that up here shortly. So what are the results, Katie?
So we have about a 71% yes on that. So we have a large amount of people on the call that are the primary contact for their audit.
Awesome. So it sounds like I'm talking to the right people, and hopefully those that are going to be assigned as a leader to offering the certification project throughout their facility. So with that, you've got to be a strong leader. A leader is going to be accountable for making sure that there's clear objectives set and goals. They're also going to ensure that they have team members accountable for that as well. No audit is conducted or performed by just one individual. Everyone in the operations is involved, And it's important that they know that they're involved in these audits. And it's important that the leader identify any of those roadblocks that could be or potentially could be in the way. So that way those team members have a clear pathway to success. And they're going to be really responsible for ensuring that throughout the process that they're checking in and communicating with leaders and others that are impacted. Because this is a big project, and then we want to make sure that everyone understands how it's going to impact their day-to-day, what that may look like for them now and in the future. Failure to have a strong leader that's accountable for that result could result in a lot of missed objectives or deadlines or confusion within the project itself. Life hack number 3 is leveraging your downtime. This is probably the most strictest standard when it comes to deadlines that I've worked with. So you've got to make sure that you use your downtime wisely. I've had a lot of really good success in my audits, internal and external, when I have my entire team prepared prior to the audit. We organize, we have roles and responsibilities. Who's going to be the document runner? Who's going to go take notes during the audit itself? Who's going to be acting as the primary point person through what sections? And knowing and scheduling that in advance, because there's a lot of moving pieces during the audit, and the more prepared you are and the more you're organized, the more successful you're going to be. And you'll actually probably be able to identify some opportunities to improve for your next audits, as well as you may prevent yourself from getting a non-conformance because you're well organized and because your team's prepared. The next big tip on this is making sure that that downtime during your audit, you're using wisely to prepare those preventative and corrective actions. A lot of the times in an audit, I'll find that, oh, I know exactly what went wrong in this case. I know exactly what I need to do. So start writing that down. Figuring it out is the biggest challenge. And a lot of the times when you're in the operations and you're talking about the steps, everything's open. You understand what you're talking about and you potentially are seeing the issue at hand. So make sure you write that stuff down. This standard requires that plans, a key word there, are required in 10 business days from the receipt of the report. You do not have to support it with objective evidence, just the plans. So you can start working on those corrective actions, preventative actions, and root cause prior to even getting the audit report itself. So use that downtime wisely. So when the clock starts, when that report is received, you've already got a head start on a lot of the work. Another quick tip that I always like to have is somebody who's taking notes throughout the audit. There are a lot of times where the auditor will be around a subject or around a requirement that maybe they didn't see a specific non-conformance, but you may have seen an opportunity for improvement. It's a great time to jot those down. Maybe it's a non-conformance, or maybe it's an opportunity for you to work on and prioritize later, but make sure you're capturing that information and sharing that information with your management and your leadership and members of your organization, because there could be opportunity for you to improve or work on those items later. And again, my last tip on this one is setting your team up for success. A lot of the times we're really good about scheduling time for the actual audit, but we don't give ourselves enough time in the post-audit process. So make sure you've got capacity to perform all those necessary follow-up action items by blocking your calendar in advance. Don't schedule meetings, don't have client visits if you can avoid it. It's not perfect, but trying to give your team capacity to respond will allow you to be more successful. So plan ahead on that. Life hack number 4, being thorough and constructive. It's extremely important while you're going through this preparation and this process. And remember, this standard requires you to perform a self-assessment that first and foremost, you understand the requirements. We've created a lot of tools, and some of them are referenced in the handouts and on our knowledge library site on nsf.org. But use those tools. Take your time understanding those requirements. Read the documents. Break them up in pieces. We even created little YouTube videos that you can watch for each of the different key sections so you can educate yourself on those prior to you jumping into your project leader assignment and your project plan for execution. So making sure that first and foremost, you understand what's being asked, and if you have questions, we're here to answer those for you. The next step is understanding the self-audit, which again is required by this standard for you to perform. And knowing that an audit is not just one thing, it's not just you reviewing your documents, but it's also making sure those activities that you're doing are reflective in those documents. So do what you write and write what you do. And we all know the FDA's frequent saying is if it's not written down, it didn't happen. So do make sure that you have that objective look at your operations and who's doing what. And it's a great time to leverage those cross-functional teams. I find a lot of times when I'm reviewing documents that we've generated and I've looked at for 30, 40 times in a row, I'm not going to be able to identify any opportunities or any things that I may be missing in the documents. So it's important that somebody from the outside, which in this case, when you're getting an audit by NSF, is an outside perspective to look at those documents and really call out and identify what is and isn't included, or where there's an opportunity for there to be misalignment or misunderstanding. So having that external review is where we come in, but you can do that yourself with cross-functional audit teams. It's also a great time to build relationships with other functions within your organization. And a key thing that I like to also encourage is ensuring that your leadership sends out a message that this is an opportunity to improve. This is not about focusing on the criticism of anyone's work. Stay focused on the process and not the people. And when you do find a recurring issue, really look at your documents. See, how did you set up the people for success? Because you may find if you pull that thread, there could be a disconnect that could be a greater issue within your facility. So again, focus on the process and not the people. And then the last tip on this is ensuring that you encourage that culture of compliance. Everyone, from the person at the warehouse store receiving materials to the person in the office paying the invoices, plays a role in compliance. They can see and hear and identify things that your quality personnel may or may not be aware of or could even see. So as a leadership and as a quality member, ensure that you encourage that. When things are identified, that you focus on the process, not the people, that you want people to see and identify when something just isn't right, because likely their gut is. So trust your people, encourage that culture, and you'll find yourself set up for success. And life hack number 5 is you're ready. A lot of times there's so much fear when it comes to jumping into a new audit, jumping into new requirements. You prepare, but there's that fear of jumping in, and you've got to do it. If you set your team up for success, if you prepare, you have accountability, you've got goals, you've got targets, and you've completed all of those, there's nothing here to stop you from being successful. We can't guarantee that you are going to pass the audit, but we can help you prepare for that. And that's what we're trying to do here in these webinar series. So be loud and proud about those dates and your goals. Make sure you get those application documents in. And again, remember that scope is very important. And if you have questions, we're here to support you. And then get everyone involved. Everyone needs to understand why you're pursuing this. It shouldn't be a quiet message. It should be a loud message. And you should be very proud of yourselves for volunteering to have your entire operations and processes evaluated and share the outcome. That's one of my favorite parts at the closure of an audit, is I share the results with my entire team and any function group that is a part of my group as well. And I show them where we did well. So we know that, hey guys, we've got some wins here. And here's what they are, and here's where the auditor complimented us. So let's keep up the good work on that. And then when you have opportunities for improvement, specifically if it was an OFI or if it was a non-conformance, ask the why, detail the why. Make sure you're explaining why it is important for us all to participate in compliance within that activity and what happened. So that way others can learn and grow from that experience and hopefully, again, sponsor that in culture of compliance that we're all shooting for. And again, last, we're here as your partner to make you successful. So if you have questions, reach out, leverage our tools. We're here to support you guys throughout this. We understand that this is a lot of information to take in, so we've tried to create a lot of tools for you, but we're always open to hearing your feedback. So we truly hope that this webinar series was helpful to you, and we're going to open it up to questions from our panel. So Katie, you want to take it away?
Absolutely. Thank you, Katie. So everybody, I know that I've mentioned it before, but please use the chat function if you have any questions that that came up during the event. We did have a couple get sent in, and I'll get started on those now. One of the questions that came in, speakers, we have one that says, can we add GRMA to our certification at any time, or do we have to decide when we apply?
I'll take that one. It's a great question, by the way, but it's really, really important that we are notified that it's going to be a GRMA audit at the time of application. So the earlier, the better. It really creates a lot of challenges if we're notified later. But thanks for that question.
Thank you, Phil. Okay, one of the other questions that came in, it says, in several places in the comparison tables, it is mentioned that criteria can be justified by risk assessments. Is this required?
I'd be happy to answer that, Katie. So it is not required. However, if there is any uncertainty if the facility is meeting a requirement, a risk assessment can be used to support that the facility is in compliance with an applicable parameter.
Okay. Thank you. That is actually all the questions that came in. If anybody has any questions, please use the chat function. We have some time left, and we would like to answer any questions you guys might have. We just had a couple that came in, so we've answered those. I will give a couple seconds to see if anybody has any other questions, and if not, I will give everybody a half an hour of their day back. I did want to mention again that there is an appendix to this presentation, and everybody will receive a copy of these slides, but in the appendix, and I can kind of run through those now, we have a copy of the tools that are available here, and the links are provided on will be provided in the PDF, and then we have some comparison tables with the differences between standards. So there are several slides in this appendix, so please, when you get a copy of the slides, review all of the content that was sent over with it. But we didn't have any other questions come in, so I'm going to go ahead and wrap up the session again by thanking everyone for taking their time out of the day to attend. And you will be hearing from us by the end of the week with a follow-up of the slides and audio of the presentation. So thank you, everybody, and have a wonderful day.